Welcome back, everybody, to the Get Back Guys podcast. Here we are. Nick, how are you today? Joining me on the show.
Good. How are you doing?
I'm getting by. I'm very tired.
Spurs got a big win last night against the Knicks, so I'm all vibes right now.
Oh, Heat lost to the Hawks.
You can't do
After
that.
snapping a 6-game win streak, though. But we'll get into that. But I wanted to touch on it's just Nick and I, and it'll remain that way. Kyle is out of the show. Kyle's taking a step back. He's being a true get back guy, and he's getting back. He might pop in on episodes here and there, but he's already.
When Russell Wilson gets traded, we'll call him up.
He'll be back. We'll think about it. We'll put him on the list. But we'll still have guests periodically. But any shows like this, chill with the main crew. It'll just be the brothers, the boys, Nick and Al, and
let's go.
Yeah, I think he was just feeling a little overwhelmed. He's also on he does another YouTube channel with me over at Movie Meals, all about movies. And
what movie channel is that?
Movie Meals, sir.
Oh, merch.
Oh yeah, merch. Oh yeah,
right.
Oh yeah. Teespring.com/stores/movie meals is Patreon too. Go check.
Just making sure.
Anyway, yeah, so Kyle is still going to be involved. He's still doing a lot of the graphics and designs for the show and still helping out quite a bit, but and might pop in as an on-air presence, but he's just taking a step back from being on camera. So Nick and I are going to run the show and maybe have some guests, but today's probably going to be a quick, lax episode here. Just going to sit back, have a good time. If it's short, it's short, but we're just gonna call it that way. There's also not a whole lot going on. It's
right before free agency. All-Star game hasn't even happened yet in the NBA, so
yeah.
Slow couple
in the
of
NBA,
weeks.
it's one of those sports where it's like baseball. You could talk every day, but you're only talking to the hardcore fans there about individual stuff. But let's touch on the NFL real quick, and we'll talk about a little bit of news in honor of Kyle, the greatest get back guy himself, because we know from last week's episode, if you watch that, he is obsessed with talking stories of J.J. Watt to the point where he brings it up every time. But so he left on when J.J. gets signed. So J.J. signed with the Arizona Cardinals. Sounds like a 2-year deal, good amount of money up front. Nick, how do you what are your thoughts on the signing with JJ Watt?
I mean, obviously initially I'm sad that he didn't join the Packers, but the $15 million price tag was a little bit higher than what the Packers would have been able to do. They were probably looking more for 10 to 12 million, but for the Arizona Cardinals themselves, I think it's a great fit. They really are doubling down, saying in the next 2 years, we're going to be in contention, hopefully, for a Super Bowl. They underachieved, I think, a little bit last year from where we thought they would be, and they kind of fiddled off at the end of the year, which was kind of disappointing. That also Chandler Jones was missing. That
and
defense,
Isaiah Simmons, they didn't have all year.
Yeah, and he's also struggled a little bit, and he'll get better as in his second year, I'm sure. So that defense has a chance is going to be a lot better as long as JJ Watt and Chandler Jones are healthy. And I'm guessing that this year they might make the step. They're still such a tough division that it's like all 4 of those teams cannot make the playoffs. Probably only 2 of them will. And the Rams are so good. The Seahawks obviously have Russell Wilson, and they have a very good roster. And then the 49ers are coming back. So they're going to be in a really interesting position. So I don't know if this is like a Super Bowl contender move, but for a franchise that wants to just get back to the playoffs for the first time in like 6 or 7 years, I really like the move, and that defensive front looks scary.
Yeah, assuming the pieces can stay healthy, I think it's maybe not. It puts them in the conversation. They're going to get in that playoff spot and maybe might be able to make a run. It's going to depend on Kyler and all those weapons and just the healthiness of the offense and the defense.
Yeah.
But what'd you think of was it Chandler Jones who tweeted out a picture of Russ getting sacked and said something like had the eye emojis or whatever? It was just him like poor guy or
Watch
something.
Out. Yeah, basically. I mean, he is going. I mean, the pass rushers in that division are insane. And, basically the Cardinals have just had Chandler Jones for the last handful of years, but you had JJ Watt alongside that. I mean, he had a slight down year last year, but he didn't have anyone else alongside of him. If both of those two guys are healthy for the next couple of years, they probably should make the playoffs. Assuming that Kyler takes a small step up, doesn't need to be too big, but that offense, unless Cliff Kingsbury really runs it into the ground there, they should be in playoff contention. And so I'm excited for that franchise. Obviously, I love them so much. And so it is cool. If he wasn't going to go to the Packers, I think that's a really good team for him to go to. And
Yeah,
that
Cards
front is scary.
Browns were the teams I was kind of hoping for.
Does this affect what Russell Wilson, what his camp is doing? Like, is he just like, I got to get out of this division as fast as possible and
it's
go
either
somewhere
you
else.
get me pieces now or I'm Audi 5,000.
Yeah. But they don't have enough cap space to do it. And with how, I don't know, if they put everything on the table right now, go out and get a couple of linemen, because that's really the only place that they can go to. They're going to have to cut around the edges, lose a lot of free agents. Their defense isn't going to be as good because they already gave up 2 first-round picks to get a top 3 safety a year ago. What's really interesting is they don't want to, destroy their future necessarily now, because Russell Wilson's putting them against the wall and saying, probably, if I'm not getting traded this summer, if things don't work out, if we go through next year, and even if we add a lineman, if I'm still getting sacked and we end up being a 6th seed in the playoffs, just because that division is so good, I want out of here. And then all of a sudden the Seahawks are in a really bad cap position because they got to take his insane dead cap hit. And then they are moving a bunch of cap around now to get linemen or something like that. So Russ has put them in a really difficult situation.
Yeah, if they trade him, I think his dead cap will then top Wentz's for the biggest in history.
It'd be like 39 million, I think.
Yeah, that's
if they did it this offseason. So it seems unlikely, but I mean, players are on the move all the time. If he wants out, he can probably get out this summer.
Yeah. I have the Hawks right now at where they're at as the 3rd best team in that division. And it's only because of the Niners' complete inconsistency. They're either in the Super Bowl or they're horrible. And so I just can't trust them right now. But I like that Cardinals roster more. And they still have money. They're still going to be looking for guys. Their cap is nice right now because they haven't paid Kyler.
Yeah.
And that Rams look good. There's rumors the Rams are very interested in trying to trade for Zach Ertz. And if they can get Zach down there to get another tight end weapon, it'll be a huge upgrade over Higbee. So those teams are looking good. Yeah. I love JJ to the Cards. I think that is a scary front 7. And they need to get a young stud corner, I think, in the draft to kind of really replace Pat Pete, who's been dipped off a little bit over the last few years. They might have to.
It'll be interesting if they keep him or not, because he's a free agent.
Yeah. And I kind of would like to see him go ring chase a little bit. And Larry, if Larry leaves, if I would love to see Larry ring chase, but man, that'd be tough. The position they're in right now, if you're gonna play a couple years, it's like, man, it'd be tough to leave because it's not like they're a crap franchise right now.
He's probably going to stay.
I think he will. It's not like in New England where they're awful and you're like, look, I could really go win again like Brady did. But Larry's, just stick him in the slot and he's been balling out there.
Yeah, he's a solid at this point, like a nice 3rd receiver, I feel like.
And they've got
he's going to catch
great
everything
opposite
thrown
him.
at him. Yeah, and Kirk was a little disappointing last year, but still I think is a really solid receiver. So their offense should be pretty electric this year.
They got Isabella too, who's a solid deep
slot receiver.
Good guy.
I would still probably have the Seahawks at the 2nd team, just because Russell Wilson has proved that he is the best quarterback in that division, even with Matt Stafford coming over, and Kyler has yet to prove it yet that he's quite close to that level. And I think their rosters are pretty comparable. The Seahawks do have a lot of really talented players at wide receiver and at linebacker and safety. And so, but the Rams, I think, have a good chance to win that division if Matt Stafford's healthy, and same with Aaron Donald.
I think so too. So anything else on JJ Watt or that division or anything in the world of football?
Yeah. I'm just, really quick, a lot of teams I think have been having press conferences right the last couple of days, or at least the Packers had theirs.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's actually a decent chance the Packers are going to franchise tag Aaron Jones, or that's a possibility. The Packers don't franchise tag players very often, if ever. They just try to avoid it. I've talked at length that I think the Packers should probably let Aaron Jones go and trust the process of drafting a second round running back a year ago. I really don't want them to sign him to a 3 or a 4 year contract, because it's going to end up turning into dead money eventually. But if they franchise tagged him and we were still able to pick up another piece, I wouldn't totally hate that, just because we have him for a year. He is still such a great player, and hopefully he wouldn't have a steep decline. But so that's pretty interesting to see what players get tagged soon. Chris Godwin is another one that's seeming like he's going to get tagged. Also, Kyle Van Noy got released. What did you think of that? I mean, it was like,
My first thought was, man, I wish Philly had money because we need linebacker help.
yeah, I mean, I would love him in Green Bay too, but
He was disappointing last year a bit for the Dolphins,
a
but
little
he's a
bit. But I think
stud.
yeah, I mean, I think any contender is going to want to get him, but it's just weird because, like, I'm curious to see what the Dolphins do with that 10 million of dead money. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like they're making sure they have space for like Deshaun Watson potentially, but obviously that's a stretch if they're going to be able to get him. And so if they don't, I'm curious if they're just going to try to replace him with a different player, if they're just going to say, we didn't think he was good enough. That's a
They
really
might
interesting.
just be
I didn't
looking
think
at
he would
their
get
play
cut.
last year and say, we've got guys
We
that
want to do a
played
different
just
style.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair
And
enough.
so we could save money by cutting him now. And I think that's my most like, my thought that I think they most likely did.
Yeah.
Um, actually your pack, in some Eagles news today, Brandon Graham is reportedly restructuring his deal to stay because he was looking like a cap casualty because of his cap hit. But the big thing around us is we're not sure what we're going to do with Derek Barnett, because he has had a decent amount of sacks, an okay amount, but he's
Is he a
missed.
defensive lineman?
He's a D
Or is he a
end,
linebacker?
yeah,
D end. Ooh,
D end.
that's a position of need
Now
for the pack. What
he's
is he
good.
linked to us?
He is being linked to a possible trade or release from us, and that I've heard Green Bay is interested in him. He's 24 years old, or 25, and he
Whoa,
was our first round
love it.
draft choice, and I a few years back, and I do love him. He has been hurt quite a bit, and that's his biggest problem, because we took a guy in the same draft as him, Josh Sweat. And Josh Sweat was a 4th-round draft pick who probably would have been a 1st or a 2nd had he not torn his ACL. He has the same amount of sacks in 500 less snaps. Oh no, he's one sack fewer. And so I think the Eagles might be looking at like, look, we still have him on his rookie contract. Don't have to pay him for another
How
year.
is he in the run game? This Derek Barnett.
Oh, solid.
Well, send him
It's his
on over.
sacks that people
We
don't.
don't need sacks from
His
him. We
sacks
need
are all
run
right.
stops.
Yeah, no, I mean
Send him over.
he's a really good player. I'd prefer to keep him, but I know Green Bay is looking, and if they get
Yeah.
a stud muffin like him, that would end up working out pretty well, I think, for that roster.
Yeah, it is interesting to see what other potential cap casualties will happen in the next week or
Golden
two
Tate got
here.
released today.
Oh, he did. Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see how those fall, and then where the franchise tag go, to see if players like Aaron Jones and Chris Godwin, really talented skill position players, get taken off the market. But I'm so excited for free agency. I mean, the Packers aren't going to do anything they never do, but I'm curious to see where some interesting players go. The wide receiver market, I think specifically, is really interesting because it's really deep. You have obviously Godwin, Robinson, and Galladay.
Yeah.
Are 3 borderline elite talent receivers, probably right outside of that top like 7. And then you still have like other receivers like Corey Davis and Curtis Samuel, who I'm a huge fan of, and I would love him to come to Green Bay, who aren't going to or might get less money because than they would have in a different year, not just because of COVID, but because there's so many, because of players like Allen Robinson above them. It's going to be interesting to see where those players go, which ones get tagged or not. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Specifically, the wide receiver market, I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I wish Philly would get some players. Instead, they're just cutting old guys who don't play.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's what
all right.
happens when you trade the boy away.
That's what happens when you make idiotic decisions, Howie Roseman, and you trust nobody but old men, and then they all get hurt. And then the young guys who were grocery store baggers can't block, and then you blame Wentz on everything and Doug on everything, and it's just I'm over it. But Nick is going to do well. You do well. I know nothing but achieving Nicks in my life, and Nick Sirianni is going to be one of them. I believe in him. Although every time he
100%.
does a press conference, I go, man, this
Oh
guy
no.
feels like a robot. He looks like a robot.
Yeah.
He just kind of stands there and he goes, yeah, we're excited. It's going to be fun. Yep.
Of course we're excited.
Yep.
It's your first head coaching job, my guy. You should be excited.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess that's it for our NFL talk.
Yeah.
Again, it's
Not a
just a
lot till
shorter
free
episode.
agency. Yeah.
Yeah, which will be soon, which will be fun. And then we've got the NBA. So Nick, you want to lead this one off? I know you and I both watching Heat and Spurs pretty consistently here. I maybe miss a
Oh
game
yeah.
here and there, but for the most part, I think we've been watching most of the year. And
Yeah.
how you feel? I mean, your Spurs are in fifth currently, I believe. I had these pulled up a minute ago.
Yeah,
I'm
the
gonna pull them
Spurs are
back
in
up.
fifth right now. They're both they're really close with Portland for the fifth and sixth spot. But they're closer to being with the Clippers and Lakers than they are to like the Pelicans, who are outside, who are the 11th seed right now. Spurs are just a huge surprise, I think, for a lot of people who didn't watch them the last couple of years. I think a lot of Spurs fans saw something like this coming, maybe not the fifth seed, a little bit over 40% through the season. But the young players there are really starting to shine. And in our last four games, we're 2-2, but that's with one of those games we lost on a buzzer beater to the Thunder. The other we lost to the Nets in overtime. So we've played really
Didn't
good
you
these last four
nail a
games.
buzzer beater a couple games back?
Yeah, well, DeJounte Murray fell down and then stood back up and threw up a heave and made it to send it to overtime against the Nets. We
Oh,
eventually
okay.
lost, but we also have been missing four players due to COVID protocols for most of those games, and DeMar DeRozan missed the first game that we lost due to personal reasons. So we're getting our team back together. It's Derek White is one of the big young players who just started playing so good and then got COVID and hasn't played and won't play till after the All-Star break. But yeah, a lot of these young players are really playing a lot better than I think the media gives them credit for. And but one more thing on the Spurs before we move on, a player to keep your eye on, and he might not play that much the rest of the year. He's got an opportunity this last couple games because of how many players are out due to COVID. His name's Luka Samanic, and yes, he's another Luka. This is his second year, and he's a 6'10" forward who can shoot, and he was very timid and very raw his first year. He's played a lot in the G League. He's even these couple games, his defense going up against, I saw him defend James Harden a little bit, obviously very small sample size, but James Harden, Julius Randle, and he held his own for the most part. He's got a chance to be a superstar in about 5 years from now. Yeah, you could be looking at this guy as one of the best players in the NBA. So he's a guy to keep your eye out on. But I'm curious, how are you feeling about your Heat after your 6-game winning streak was
6-game winning streak snapped last night. I'm feeling good. I mean, the big
You're
thing was
finally
they're
in the playoff hunt, right?
well, yeah, well, they were one game back from fifth when they were in 10th before this streak. They're currently in seventh. They were in fifth yesterday before the loss. They're only a half game back behind the Knicks and the Raptors. They're a game back behind the Celtics in fourth. And they're not, they're 4 games back from the Bucks, and then they're a good 6 games back from the Sixers in first, and 5.5 from the Nets. But I like it. They're starting to get healthy. We've had a similar problem with COVID. I mean, Tyler Hero, Avery Bradley's barely been there. We're playing Gabe Vincent out there. Who the heck's Gabe Vincent? But some of those older vets are starting to get a chance to really, or some young guys are starting to get a real chance to play. And I've liked the play that I've seen. It's the same issues I brought up in the finals last year. It's just turnovers. Spoelstra is a great coach. I think he's top 3 in the NBA, but man, does he just loves to pass the ball and it ends up really causing a lot of turnovers, and the inconsistency of healthy has been brutal too. Goran just got back. Jimmy's been off and on. Hero's been off and on. But I want to mention this about the Heat because I read the article today about the Harden trade and all the
Yeah,
information.
that you guys were very you almost got him after
So
they backed out and then they went
no,
back for it.
we backed out.
The Rockets backed out of the original deal and then they
Yeah.
almost made a deal with you.
So we sent them an offer. They seemed interested. Then they backed out. Then they came back, and I've got the list. They wanted Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Precious Achua, who was our first round pick this year, who's a very nice
He's playing
forward.
good.
Kendrick Nunn, salary filler, 2 first round picks, and 4 pick swaps. That's a haul. That is more than what the Nets gave. That is a big deal. And Pat Riley said no. And then he said, look, we like Harden. Who doesn't like Harden? He's a good player. We don't need Harden that bad. Like, look at our cap situation. Look at these young guys. I think trading, I'm going to die on this horse. I think trading Tyler Hero would be a mistake. I think the kid is in his second year, and I think he legitimately is going to be a superstar in the league with Bam if he can keep trending the way I believe he is. And I think trading him for a star now is a bad idea because I think I don't think winning this year to then contend next year and slowly dip off is worth the possibility of contending for the next 6 years, which I think the Heat have a legit shot of. And they're going to get a big free agent next year. Apparently Victor Oladipo really wants to go to Miami. That was a report that came out yesterday.
That would be big because he was the key piece in the Harden deal. That ended up getting done. And that's the big difference is because he is, just like a really great player. I always thought he was going to take another leap and he hasn't quite done that.
Injury didn't help him.
That's interesting. That's a lot of picks to ask for.
And players.
If I would probably give up Duncan Robinson, Nunn, and Hero and 2 firsts for Harden pretty quickly, just because I think then you guys are clearly the best team with Harden, Bam, and Jimmy Butler. I also think what's interesting is the narrative around Harden, which I was going to talk about. Like, he is playing so good with the Nets right now, and he's playing a very different style of basketball than he's played the last few years. And I've always been a big fan of Harden. I think Harden gets way too much hate. I think he's a better defender than people give him credit for. And I think he is an incredible passer, and he's really showing that. And he's definitely balling out right now. I know Kevin Durant's been out, so it's given him a little more time to handle the ball, and same with Kyrie. But it would have been fun to see him throwing lobs to Bam and with that intensity there. But obviously
cool.
With all those picks and everything, it is tough to give up because there were a lot of people in the league who I feel like weren't certain about Harden's ability to adapt into a situation with other stars. And that's been completely put to rest now, but I wouldn't have taken the deal that they were suggesting right there, but
that's a lot. And they ended up settling for less. That's all your young players, some who are potential stars for Miami. So I get why Pat pulled out. Victor turned down a 2-year extension, and he'll be a free agent this year. And the rumor is he really wants to go to Miami. So if we need to wait a year and go get
at
Victor,
the deadline, I wouldn't be shocked if Houston tries, because if Houston loses him for nothing, like the fact that he turned that down seems like he's going to be on the move again, just because then the whole Harden deal was an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
And people give the Spurs a lot of crap for them trading Kawhi for DeMar DeRozan, but right now the Spurs, 3 of their 5 starters came from that trade with DeMar DeRozan, Keldon Johnson, and Jakob Poeltl, or Block Poeltl, as his name really is. He's been awesome, but so that would be really bad if they don't trade Victor and he just leaves. But it'd be good for whatever team gets him.
Do you know off the top of your head who are the big name free agents next year? I know there's Victor, but who's going in?
DeMar DeRozan is a free agent. He's
Be great in South Beach.
he would be very good for you guys because his passing game has just skyrocketed the last 2 years, which has really been fun to see. But he, off the top of my head, I know he's one of the bigger ones because obviously there was Giannis, LeBron, Kawhi. I mean, I think he could still technically be a free agent if he opted out, like if they got bounced in the first round by the Spurs, which could happen. Be pretty cool. But I'm not sure who else. It is supposed to be a pretty big class, but I can't remember who else besides that because a lot of them have re-signed deals or extended them, like Giannis and LeBron.
I believe Jimmy Butler actually. I think it's a team option maybe, but because I think he's in his third year. But yeah, I like the way the Heat are trending right now. They just need their second half of the schedule looks much better, and I think they can really. They just got to get consistent, get into the playoffs. It's clearly all we need. That's what the bubble showed.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to
get bounced. They get bounced. Yeah.
So you don't have to do the playing game.
Yeah.
Getting into the 6th seed is kind of.
I forgot they're still doing that playing game.
So if you the 9 and 10 will do a playing game with 7 and 8. So 6th seed is a big deal. And so a lot of teams are going to be fighting for that. Obviously, as long as you're in the top 10, you've got a chance. And, you're probably going to take a Jimmy Butler led team going up against LaMelo Ball and the Charlotte Hornets. Cause I think they're like LaMelo right now.
He's playing pretty really good. Yeah. He's good.
Playing really good.
He's clearly the best of the three of them.
Yeah. Which I think we all kind of thought that was going to happen.
I think so.
But it's cool to see it, actually turn out. And I mean, it's kind of fun to see Charlotte be a pretty good team and got a real chance to make the playoffs.
It's fun that his dad is not. It's nice that his dad is not being obnoxious and you can just enjoy him because his dad made you not like Lonzo, even though Lonzo's a fine player. Just he's okay.
Yeah, I mean, he was drafted 2 and he probably shouldn't have been.
Yeah. But LaMelo so far, halfway in the year, is looking like he's or under halfway in the year, but he's
the best
looking like
player in the class so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I mean, it's you can't really judge that yet, but he's been incredible for them. And and the East is really interesting because the top teams of the East have been pretty solid, but a lot of the West's overall records are way superior to the East, and so we're seeing that big gap. Which has to do with Heat getting COVID and things like that. But the Boston Celtics are one game above 500. They are super disappointing. Their team has like no ball movement when they play. Kemba Walker, it's taken him some time to kind of get going the last few games. I feel like he started to play better. So, they're at the 4 seed. That's probably where they're gonna end up, I would think. Because I don't think they're better than the Bucks, Nets, or 76ers right now. My finals pick is still Nets Lakers. I think that's
which would be
going
fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, if
fun to watch,
obviously, if that's banking on them being healthy. Although honestly, I think the Nets might be able to make it if Kevin Durant wasn't healthy or if one of their big 3 wasn't healthy. That's how.
So if it goes Nets Lakers, that means Kevin Durant and LeBron will have met 3 times in the finals, all with a different team.
4 times,
right? Have they met 4 times in the?
Well, they met Durant twice in Golden State.
Yeah, but LeBron and him met when Miami, Oklahoma.
Yep,
and then it'd be Cleveland, Golden State, and then LA and New York. Yep. That's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, 3 different teams, 4 different times is what it would be, and Durant's up 2-1. Obviously, Durant, had a little bit of help, but it wasn't
team.
Yeah, way better team. But also be interesting because LeBron did go up against Harden and Durant in the first finals in 2012. And then obviously, I mean, Kyrie Irving hit the biggest shot of the 2016 finals with LeBron getting that win. So we know what they can all like. We know these guys can perform in the postseason. Obviously, people will question Harden a little bit, but he's a very good player, and him falling apart in the postseason is a little not really based in fact as much this last couple of years. So it would be an amazing series.
Saw something that you just reminded me of, that Kyrie, of course, he hit an insanely incredible shot, But if I remember correctly, I read that, and I just didn't even realize this, but LeBron scored the 14 points to get them to that tie.
Yep. It's
And
true.
LeBron did all of that. It was 12 or 14 points, and LeBron did all of it,
Yeah.
set Kyrie up, and then Kyrie hit the biggest shot. You see
Yeah.
LeBron and Kyrie taking shots at Bronny a little bit by saying, this is the
He's not
best teammate I've
clutch.
ever played for. He's talking about Durant being the best teammate he's ever played with and the greatest player ever. And LeBron was pretty public about how that hurt him a little bit.
Yeah. There's been some weird jabs. So I know that Kyrie said he didn't think he was clutch, basically, or didn't mention his name being clutch, and then, which is just statistically false because LeBron has the most clutch points and has one of the highest percentages. But also Brandon Ingram said that Zion Williamson, he said something like, it was nice. It's nice to play with someone who's as talented as me. And he played with LeBron for a year. It's like, my guy, you guys
I didn't
are
hear that one.
I was like, you're in the 11th seed right now. And come on, get out of town.
Who
here
does Brandon Ingram even
LeBron.
play for?
He's the Pelicans. He plays with Zion.
Okay. Oh,
never been,
that would make sense.
Never been to the playoffs. Never been to the playoffs.
Brandon, what is wrong with you, my guy?
Yeah.
One time, LeBron.
He was an all-star last year when he shouldn't have been.
Yeah. You know who should have been an all-star this year? DeMar DeRozan, Dame Lillard, Bam Adebayo.
Well, Dame is an all-star. Should have been a starter. Dame should have been a starter.
Dame should have been a starter. Bam should have been on the roster. We're sending you sending anybody to the USA World Game? We're sending Precious and Tyler Hero. Who you got?
We're sending big body Keldon Johnson.
Oh, Keldon.
That's his nickname. He's just
an absolute animal.
He's a unit. That's the only way to describe him. He's awesome. And he got, guess who endorsed him for the straight up all-star game? Guess what celebrity did?
Russell Wilson.
Mariah Carey. Big fan.
Oh, and he loves a good unit.
There is a video of him singing one of her songs and how it's one of his favorite songs. And she tweeted and she was like, love it. This guy for all-star. He's awesome though. He's a second-year player. We got him. He's the guy we got with in the Kawhi trade, drafted him 29th. He's the only player on his side, which is he's one of the non-lottery draft picks up there, which is impressive. He's been incredible. He's just a good shooter, big dude, likes to get really physical. And so he has a chance to be a really good player as well. So I'm excited that it's the first time the Spurs have had someone in this game in a very long time.
Two things. Are you nervous as of today that Texas has taken away all mask restrictions with your Spurs struggling with COVID already to then now they're trying to go back to normal here?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little nervous just because I don't want anyone to get COVID, and it's a tough situation down there. I think the Spurs will still be wearing masks, and they're going to do what the NBA says, and they're going to stay with those same protocols. I mean, it is a little nerve wracking, but I think they'll be all right.
So my next question was, and side note, I like seeing the 76ers be pretty good. They're competing up there.
Embiid is awesome.
Yeah. But two teams that have stuck out to me, and I'm curious your thoughts on them. What are the Knicks doing? And how are they even at 500? Because they should be awful. And
it doesn't make sense.
The Phoenix Suns. You kidding me right now? Balling out. Are they two in the
they are, because they beat the Lakers last night, even with Devin Booker getting ejected in the third quarter.
Oh, yeah. They're balling. Devin Booker, Chris Paul, they're starting to really figure it out. And I dig it. You got any thoughts specifically on those two?
Yeah, well, the Spurs just played the Knicks last night and walloped them by 26 points, which was pretty big time. The Knicks really feel like, I mean, they've got a lot of gritty players. They've got a lot of Tom Thibodeau players. Julius Randle is kind of playing his best. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And so defensively, Tom Thibodeau just has him dialed in. And, people have questioned, me included, Tom Thibodeau's ability to get a team to a finals and win a finals with longevity and, being more modern, but his ability to get a team to lock in and play defense has never really been questioned. He's typically been able to get teams that don't have a ton of talent playing pretty good. You saw that with that Bulls team. I don't think it was just because of Derrick Rose and when he won his MVP, but they were the 1 seed that year, and I think won almost 60 games, right around 60 games. That team wasn't the most overly talented team I've ever seen. That's that's the main reason Derrick Rose won MVP that year, because he was sensational. But Tom Thibodeau can get his guys to dial in. He does have some negative effects to that because some players just aren't with the system. You saw that fall apart in Minnesota, or you run players down. But for using Julius Randle as like a 90s big man is basically what he's doing, with a little more modern, because he'll bring the ball up the court. I enjoyed watching them. They're just playing really hard, and they're very smart defensively. Everyone just stays with their man. They're up, they're always engaged, everyone's engaged, and that's a huge deal in regular season. And in a conference, when you're in the East, I think they might drop a little bit from the 4th seed. I mean, a couple weeks ago they were ahead of the Celtics and Heat, and it's like, what's going on? But I think they'll have a good chance to sneak into the postseason, especially with how weak the East has been so far this year.
Yeah. And real side note, the Wolves are the worst team in the NBA.
They're terrible
record. They're awful. I feel bad for Cat for multiple reasons, because Cat's a good player, and just the family issues he's dealt with all year.
He's also missed a lot of time. He's had a wrist injury, and he hasn't played that much.
But I just want to point this out. My boy Jimmy Butler years ago said, this franchise isn't run well. These guys aren't that good. They're lazy. They don't want to work. I'm going to beat him with the second team. He did. And everybody called Jimmy out. Jimmy, meanwhile, has been to finals. He's playing well. I mean, yes, Heat right now have inconsistency, but they have fallen apart in Minnesota. They are awful.
Yeah.
They're horrible. And it's a bummer for Cat. I can't name another player on that team. Isn't Ricky Rubio back?
He is. D'Angelo Russell is there. Malik Beasley. It's
These
weird.
Are good players that need
they have
to
some
go
talented
somewhere
players,
else.
but yeah. They're just a bummer, a joke of a franchise. And
that stinks.
And they had one good year with Jimmy Butler when they made the 8th seed or the 7th seed in the postseason. It was like, oh, they're starting to turn it around. They're the same old team that ruined KG and made him leave. I mean, they didn't ruin him. Obviously, he was incredible and won an MVP with them. But they're just a joke of a franchise.
I think they're
right
just
now.
Taking off the next 5 years and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you just they don't know how to develop players. I mean, you the difference between a franchise who knows how to develop players and not. Same thing with the Kings. The Kings have a lot of talented players. Players are going to go on. De'Aaron Fox is going to leave Sacramento one day and be incredible, I'm sure, but they don't translate to wins because they just don't have the right culture there. And when you're in a small market and you don't get a 1%er guy like LeBron James or something, you have to do it with culture. You don't get a Giannis Antetokounmpo, you have to do it with culture, right? And a lot
you either
of
have to build the culture
fail.
or you got to get lucky with a guy who brings the culture.
Which is Giannis. One of the weird things about Charlotte and how bad they've been with Michael Jordan running them. And you would think that they would have, they would be developing so many great young players who are ready to get after it, because that's the culture that Michael Jordan sets. And it just hasn't been the case since he's owned them, but could change with LaMelo Ball. He could be one of those guys who really changes that franchise.
Anything else, or should we wrap this show up?
Well, we can talk about the Suns real quick, because I don't think we didn't mention them, but I haven't watched them too much. Well, I didn't get a respond. Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, they're really good. They're going to be a really tough out in the playoffs. I could definitely see them. I don't see anyone beating a healthy Anthony Davis, LeBron James led Lakers team, but I could definitely see this Phoenix team beating the Clippers, because the Clippers are the same team they were last year. They're not better, I don't think. And but Chris Paul, I think, has just brought a maturity to that team and to that franchise. You got James Jones in the front office, your guy, who's helped bring in some of those pieces there. And Devin Booker's also playing a lot better. He started the season out not playing very good, which is why I think he ended up being an alternate to the All-Star game and not an original selection, because he did struggle, but people kind of just brushed that aside when talking about him getting voted. But he's playing awesome now. DeAndre Ayton still has some developing to do. He's playing pretty good, but they're a scary team. I think the West has I think it's the Lakers, and then you go down, and I think the Clippers, Jazz, Suns, Spurs, Portland, Nuggets are all really good teams who could all, if any of those teams play each other, could easily go to 6-7 games. It's not going to be like probably the first round of the East where it's a lot of 4 or 5 game wins. And the Suns are a team that if they are on the opposite side of the Lakers, have a legitimate chance to make it to the conference championship.
Be cool. I like Devin Booker.
It would be. I'm so happy that the Suns are good.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, love it. Well, for the Get Back guys, that is it. NBA, a little bit of NFL here, top of the show. So guys, remember to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. We've got a pretty solid following, so we really appreciate it for what you guys have been listening and things like that. We're not stopping. No, Kyle is taking a step back, getting back from being on camera as much, but getting back. He's the greatest get backer of them all. But he'll still pop in and out. We're still going to keep some of these guests coming because we love having them on the show. So remember to do all that stuff. Go Heat, baby.
Yep. Go Spurs, and
see you next time.
Yeah, hopefully some big NFL trades soon.